as possible. And today we're going to focus a lot on feminism and the feminist action in Yemen. I'm sure you might be surprised that this part of the world is not very fond of women's rights, many stereotypes of women in the global south, as you may know. But yes, I will tell you that there are many feminists who are working to enhance the gender equality in our country. And in my intervention, I'm going to focus on three thematics. First of all, to talk about this feminist ambition, because how was it developed and how it came to life. And second, to talk about how our feminist ambition was crystallized, and it was crystallized through a document. We call it the Feminist Peace Roadmap, which was our blueprint to talk to everyone that, yes, we have a feminist agenda and we want our peace process to be inclusive. And third and finally, I will talk about the realization of the complex reality. So while advocating for feminist agenda for peace in Yemen, we were hit by the fact that the situation is very complex, and right now we are in a situation of climate crisis. So how this also led us to expansion towards feminist climate justice, basically. So I know that maybe not many of you are international relations students, but a little reminder will not be harmful. So when we're talking about feminism, we're talking about when we put it in the different schools of thought or the different disciplines of international relations, it always comes in the critical category. So what do we mean by critical? That as feminists, we are bringing different perspectives to the topics of war, militarization, development, etc. And we are trying to put another element to this equation. The element in the equation is that we have to have gender lens, and we have to focus on gender as an element of analysis, because as you may know or may not know, depending on your background, other disciplines such as realist, liberalist, etc., they do not consider gender as an element, and they do not even, some of them do not consider individuals as element of analysis. So feminism comes with this. We come with criticism of the masculine approaches. We are considering that the idea that state is rational and powerful, it comes from masculinity, because it is the reality. So, to sum it all, according to the feminist approach, that international system is unequal and it is very, very gendered. And it is privileging certain groups other than others, depending on the reality. And if I could give you a piece of literature to read, I would advise that everyone reads like this Cynthia Inoya book, Banana, Beaches and Bases, written in 1989, which basically studied this role of women in military camps and the conception of masculinity, and how women, even though they at the time were not thought about as active, really are important in this equation of militarization. Sometimes militarization reinforces these traditional roles that women would usually are supposed to take by the society. So this is just to start. When I speak a lot about feminism, feminist approach, you put in mind we're talking about putting a gender lens, being a critical, and always taking gender as an element of the equation. So also before starting, I would like just to give you a bit of a background of what is the situation in Yemen. So I'm sure that you read somewhere that Yemen is the greatest humanitarian disaster. You read about the situation, and the situation is actually very dire. So the country is going through war since 2014, and the war have escalated since 2015. So just to give you some numbers, we have almost 300,000 deaths. 60% are linked, of these deaths are linked to famine or diseases. Unfortunately, the country went through the worst cholera epidemic. And we have around 80% of the population being in need of humanitarian aid. And we have one of the largest displaced community, around 4 million displaced people. And how did the war started in Yemen? Of course, it is as much as many wars around the world. It did not just start in 2014. Its roots goes beyond that, and I can give you like just a whole lecture on the roots and the analysis of the war. But to sum it up, I will give you key dates. Key dates start with September 2014, when the Houthi militia, which is a militia supported by Iran, took over the capital Sana'a in the north, and they put a dead stone on the political transition period, because we were in a political transition period after the Arab Spring that took place in 2011. And 6 months later, Houthis almost took over 70% of the country, and the government actually had to seek refuge in Saudi Arabia. And this action took the war in a new pathway. In March 2015, the Yemeni government solicited an intervention from a coalition, and this coalition was formed by Saudi Arabia and UAE, and have worked on trying, and the main objective was to end the coup that was done by the Houthi militia. Unfortunately, 9 years later, the war have not the war has not achieved its objective. We still have Houthis very and strongly present in the northern areas of Yemen, northern western areas, and the government controlling mostly the southern parts of the government, along with the different fractions that there are in the government. So many actors are involved in this war. You have regional actors, international actors, and even like local actors. And everyone has their own agenda. So Houthis want to bring back the imamate, because in the northern Yemen, this was the system is a Islamic royal system. And royal system, and basically Southerners want to reclaim back the country, because you may not know, but Yemeni unity actually, as was told by certain historians, inspired German unification. So we were unified 1 year before Germany, but unfortunately we were not able to have a successful unity as much as Germany. But I would say that everyone, somehow, all of these people agree on one thing. And I would let you guess what this one thing is. Tarararam. The one thing is that let's exclude women. Let's exclude women from every single aspect of the political life and tell them it's not your time. And not just exclude women, but also raise the violations against women. And I would tell you, as a Yemeni, as someone who was born, raised, and lived there most of their life there, we have a bit of the, I would say, a system that is a bit complex. So you have the government and the democratic system, more or less we can debate, but we have political pluralism, etc. And you have the tribal system. And the tribal system, in the very far areas, is the one that works because the central governments cannot reach. So basically, and this tribal system is very protective of women. But what is happening today, because of the war and because of the dissolution of the social fabric, we are having a setback. So basically, right now, the different groups, including Houthis and majority Houthis in the north, the Houthi militia, are doing grave violation against women, including detention, torture, sexual abuse, and also rape in different secret prisons. And these actions are being done in the spectrum of all of the military actors. And on top of that, they are imposing new narrative and very extreme and radical narrative, in the sense they do not want women to be in the public spaces, so they have imposed what they call the mahram. So mahram system is a system that women have when they travel, they have to have a male guardian. So this male guardian could be your 10-year-old's brother, and you are an old woman, 40 years old, successful in your career, but you still have to have this small man to be the one that protects you. So this is something somehow all of the factors have agreed upon. But on the other hand, I myself had the privilege to work with incredible Yemeni women who risk their life every single day. So when it comes to negotiating to bring for ceasefire, like small ceasefires, when it comes to evacuating families, when it comes to releasing the detainees, this was a role women have been very active, and Yemeni women have been politically active since the independence. But I would say that the peak came with the 2011 Arab Spring. The Arab Spring. So this was the peak when Yemeni women were super active, and then the war comes, and we are in a shoot. But the downfall happened on political level. Yet on a societal level or on a grassroots level, women are leading the peace. But it is peace in the sense of every single day. It's every single day activity. And I will give you an example, and I have the privilege to have worked with these incredible women. It's called the Abductees Mothers Association. Abductees Mothers Association, they are basically a group of mothers of civilians who were abducted, and this group was able to negotiate the release in the course of the 9 years of 1,100 detainees. So very, very big number with very little means, but they still were able to achieve something. And I will give a comparison and maybe just to put it in perspective. So we have the UN-led process in Yemen, and with its $36 million budget and over hundreds of experts, 2 years ago in 2022, they were only, like in one negotiation, were only able to exchange 1,100 prisoners only. And I would argue, and I think you can also agree with me, that investing in Yemeni women and in their efforts is more cost effective and sustainable. We're actually proving that investing in local means of peace is actually important. And during, for example, the period of the pandemic, where you have a failed state, or a state that is not able to provide anything, it was the women who were able to train doctors, fundraise to prepare hospitals, to bring materials. So the feminist ambition is there, and it's not just an ambition, it's a reality. It is something that women did every single day. But the problem is that we have a political elite that is always questioning why do you want to how I say a seat on the table. It's not your time. We are protecting you. And all of these argues, while they cannot see or they cannot feel that we do have an agenda and we do have an ambition that the peace process at our country is basically becomes more inclusive, because what is happening right now is that we have a peace process that is exclusive, that is only serving the warring parties and is not serving the local community. So we have been telling them, no, listen to us, and we have something important to say. So many years go by, and basically we were still fighting, we're still doing our work, and then we got the idea that because I would tell you that we were always confronted by the most stupid questions, and sometimes it even comes from diplomats and even Western diplomats. Like, what do women want? As if no one have told them that women is a very gender umbrella of very different groups. Because my need as Nisma, a woman, a Yemeni young woman who was born in the city, is not the same as another. I would say Fatima, who lives in a rural area, and whom her land have been occupied and filled with mines and etc. So actually, we cannot just say like, what do women want? Because I would argue that no man was asked this question. So what women want was actually crystallized by by us having to put together the feminist peace roadmap. And I would just try to share my screen. Can Valentina Nazar give me access to share my screen, because I want you to access the roadmap while we're talking, and yeah. You can put me the host if it is easier. Yeah. Yes, I am. Yes, indeed. So, are you able to scan the code? I will put it for a couple of minutes while I'm talking. But yeah. So basically, the feminist peace roadmap has been our blueprint. We have put together a document that shows everyone that yes, we know what we want, and we are preparing a document that focuses on the different stages of the visa process. So basically, what should happen during a ceasefire period? What should happen during a peace negotiation period? What should happen during the transitional period? And to make it easy for anyone who is working on the visa process, we gave them an inclusion mechanism. So basically, an inclusion mechanism where I am a peace negotiator, a mediator or negotiator. I want to design a process that is inclusive. I just I just go and see what Yemeni women are proposing to me, and what we are proposing basically is it's very simple. It's very it's very simple. We are proposing agreements, recommendations on how to make security, how to do confidence building measures, how we should focus on different issues, such as, for example, the release of detainees, the opening of the humanitarian corridor, etc., etc. And the development of the peace of the feminist peace roadmap came in a very in a very inclusive way. So we started with a group of 30 women who are 30 young leaders, and then we expanded to different groups and we did consultations with the Yemeni political leaders, civil society, until we reached the very grassroots actors in 10 governorates. So in the process, we were actually able to reach thousand person during the process of drafting the roadmap. So we have had a first version in 2021 and the second version in 2022/2023, and we are working on updating it to speak to the current reality. And my role within this process is also to add this additional layer of feminist climate justice, because, as I told you, we were confronted by the reality. So I would give you like some of the aspects about it. We talked about giving space for young people, for civil societies, for people with disabilities, marginalized groups. We talked about rehabilitation of the social fabric, the demilitarization, and confidence building measures, the release of the detainees. As I told you, we also gave certain topics some attentions, because within this very general umbrella of there is a war in Yemen, you have very specific issues that concerns the different cities. For example, we have a city in Yemen called Taiz, in the center, that has been in siege since 2015. So, how would I say that the feminist peace roadmap has been influential? Yes, it has been, and in certain levels. First of all, it gave us a strong voice that, okay, when someone tells us like what do Yemeni women want, we go up and be like, this is our feminist roadmap, peace roadmap. You should read it. Like we literally put it in the face of everyone all the time. And when it comes to our international advocacy, we were able to have a big influence. For example, in February 2022, the UN Security Council have adopted the resolution 2624, and in this resolution, it had more stronger gender inclusion language. It talked about women's inclusion, youth inclusion, etc. And it actually we were able to see a nice reflection of the feminist peace roadmap within this resolution. So there is still lots of work to do, but I would tell you that if you were able to get out of this room today and you have one thing in mind about how Yemeni women were able to capitalize on their knowledge, their work, and support an inclusive peace process, keep in mind the feminist peace roadmap. And of course, you still can contact me if you have any more questions, and we're going to have a Q&A. So if you have any question, please share them. I'm more than happy to answer. And the third and last part of my intervention, I'm going to talk about how the idea of how the reality have basically hit us. We are seeking of achieving feminist inclusive peace And yet other factors are actually perpetuating the conflict, accelerating the conflict, and I would argue that climate change is one of the major factors. So Yemen, as many countries in the Middle East, is very vulnerable to climate change, and with the layer of war, this has actually how I'll say complex the situation, because when we are talking about war, about militarization, we're talking about destruction of lands, displacement. Displacement means that we put lots of pressure on certain areas that are already vulnerable. We are talking about use of of the chemicals in the weapons. So this is actually just destroying the lands, because the lands, you have also, unfortunately, Houthi militia have been using the strategy of implementing mines and even anti-personal the land mines. So this actually have made lots of lands unusable to God knows when, until we are able to retrieve all of these mines. So I myself has been involved in championing for peace, demilitarization, and feminist and gender climate justice. So how this idea came through? This idea came through again through collective work, but this time it came on a collective work on MENA level, on Middle East and North Africa level, or how other people like to call it, West Asia level, SWANA, West Asia level, or we can argue whatever term we use. But this time it was advocacy on a regional level, and I joined what we call the MENA Feminist Task Force. So with my group, the MENA Feminist Task Force, before COP28, we worked on 28 demand documents, where demilitarization was an important part of this document. So we have for sure we were for sure put in mind many factors, but this time we called for intersectional, decolonial, anti-racist, and gender transformative approach. We try to look in we try to look to actually transform the situation this time, especially when it comes to the climate crisis, doing solutions that actually helps the situation is not helpful. There has to be actually a radical transformation. So within this demand document, there were 6 priorities, and the 6 priorities each had their own sets of recommendations and trying to influence policymakers. But the first focused on inclusive climate engagement action, and this means that to help women, youth, marginalized community to be part of the negotiations. Second, it focused on the climate finance. So basically, to have climate finance that is right-based, gender-responsive, flexible, affordable. And the third, as I told you, focused on conflict-affected countries, militarization, peace building. So basically, many of the countries in MENA, including Yemen, are actually in a situation of conflict. So, which adds, as I told you, an additional layer, because there is impact on the refugees, the migrants, the displaced people, the resources, all of etc. The fourth priority was focusing on adaptation, resilience, disaster risk reduction, and preparedness. The fifth focused on climate education, capacity strengthening, and knowledge transfer. And the last priority focused on green economy, just energy transition, and fossil fuel phase out. So many of the demands were very ambitious, and we're still working on them. My expertise in the climate field, I would not say they are very excessive, but my expertise on peace building, resolution are very excessive. So regarding the demands on militarization, it revolves around four thematics. So what we are calling for is to have an intersectional approach to conflict and climate change, because until now, very little, and even within, if you go like to the UNFCCC different agendas, there is very little people talking about how conflicts perpetuate climate change, and how also climate change elements like feed into conflict, because you have communities who are very scared of their resources. So this has been one of the actual demands, because until now, and I have been very involved in different peace processes, including Yemen, Libya, Syria. All of the special envoys or these processes do not consider climate into their peace building agenda. So climate is always like, okay, it's there, but we cannot think about it. So even though, as I told you, it is an important element, it is an element that is basically exacerbate the different conflicts. So do we imagine that, see how much destructed are Syrian lands, especially with Bashar al-Assad using phosphor bombs to killing? So do we imagine how the different farmers one day are going to go back to their lands that they cannot use for decades, or how many and how much is deforestation, and how much are the different disasters that are even man-made happening? And another element when it comes to thinking of climate change and gender slash conflict is the exacerbation of gender-based violence, and also the how gender inequality is always exacerbates when it is in situation of distress. So when it is conflict, you are already in a high level of gender inequality, and then you add the climate disasters, and it's just too much. So I will give you an example that was shocking to me and to many people and my Libyan colleagues. So last summer, the city of Derna in Libya was hit by a cyclone, by floods, and these floods actually destroyed majority of the city, disasters, etc. But when it came to time for aid, one thing that was forgotten to be put in the aid kits was feminine hygiene or menstrual hygiene kits. So when it's time of disasters, people forget these gender considerations, forget that certain groups in the community do have special needs, and to think about having countries that are going to conflict and climate change vulnerability, it's just going to put the situation in a more critical way. And this is why in our demands we were demanding that there has to be long-term policies that addresses these gender inequalities, because we don't want that any other time another country that goes through climate disaster or any type of disaster, that women, when it's time to menstruate, and this was unfortunately what happened in Gaza, that Gazawi women for a long time before aid was able to come into the city were taking medications so that they stop that would stop them from getting their periods, or it would delay their periods, because it's just going to be disastrous to have a period when you are in a displaced in a situation of displacement. Secondly, is to thirdly, sorry. It is our ambition to see that the different political systems within the UNFCCC really incorporates this nexus between climate and conflict. And lastly, when it comes to climate and conflict, one of the things that has been the most shocking to me is the fact that until today, the reporting of military-induced greenhouse gases or greenhouse emissions is still not mandatory. It is elective, and it's because of the during Paris Agreement. It was because of the advocacy of the United States actually that advocated. But the reality tells us today in numbers that if we put all of the military of the world, especially I would say NATO militaries that are like the biggest responsible, it would put them in like the fourth emitter in the world. So it's around 5.5% of the total emission. And with the situation of conflict and with the situation of the run towards armament, we're just seeing that these emissions are going to increase. So I would focus on MENA region. So for example, in MENA region, the defense budget in 2023 rose 3.3%. And the expenditure, and the numbers are always horrific, it's around $238 billion USD in 1 year. And what is more horrific is knowing that the forecast is saying that this is only going to increase with time, and it would reach for 247%. So if we look in military expenditure in certain countries of the Middle East, some countries spend an average of 1%, and some even spend up to 7.55% of their GDP. So I don't want to end on a very negative note, but it is obvious. I hope that it is obvious to you that if we should call for climate justice, military emissions should be reporting should be mandatory. We should call for demilitarization and calling for investing in factors of peace. So what is actually happening today is that countries are just investing in factors of war. And to summarize all of what I said today, like there is a feminist ambition in Yemen and in MENA region in particular, and we are actually working on achieving it, but we are just hit with the very complex reality and how, as the UN Secretary General, we are. MENA particularly, it's a region that is always on the brink of conflict, crisis, etc. So we hope that through our collective work as feminists, as young people, to be able to achieve something that is tangible and to achieve a peace that is durable. And I will end here, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
We are now open the session for questions. So if anyone wants to question anything, now is the time.
Okay, already with the microphone, so I think I'm going to start. Where can she sing? I think she can sing it here.
I
Yeah.
can, yeah, I cannot hear it. Yeah.
Oh, really? Is it better?
A little bit better, but maybe Israel, if you are just next to the laptop, you can repeat what was said.
So, we have the fact that women are like in the group of the most vulnerable to conflicts, right?